Thank you, George. In 2 days' time, on the 35th anniversary of the Morgentaler decision, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will be tempted to proclaim, as he has done many times before, that abortion is a, quote, right protected by the Charter, affirmed by the Supreme Court of Canada, and that would be unconstitutional to restrict at any point before birth. Politicians of all party stripes often repeat this claim, which holds that women have a legitimate so-called right to kill their offspring in utero, and that any legislation whatsoever attempting to restore legal protection to the unborn would, of course, be struck down by the Supreme Court as an affront to the Constitution. Problem is, that claim is not supported by facts. It's more like a gossip, supported only by the empty air which blows it from person to person, infecting the hearer with its malice until, having gone round the nation and entered every ear, it spreads up to the mind where it gets lodged and perceived as truth by many. With all due respect to our Prime Minister, he has been misled about what the 7 presiding justices wrote in the 1988 Supreme Court decision. If you read the actual Morgentaler ruling, what you discover is that they never found a right to abortion. Rather, there was unanimous agreement amongst the 7 judges that the state has a legitimate interest in protecting unborn human life. To quote Chief Justice Robert George Dixon from the 5-2 majority that struck down the previous abortion law, quote, "I agree that the protection of fetal interest by Parliament is also a valid governmental objective," end quote. Justice Lamer concurred. And here's from Madam Justice Bertha Wilson, also from the majority opinion, quote, "The precise point in the development of the fetus at which the state's interest in its protection becomes compelling, I leave to the informed judgment of the legislature," end quote. You got that? She admitted that the state has an interest in protecting the fetus. And she invited the legislature to determine at which point legal protection ought to begin. So today, we appeal to our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, please listen to Bertha. To paraphrase her words, Mr. Trudeau, protection of life in the womb is something which the state of which you are the head has a compelling interest. It's notable that Bertha Wilson was the most pro-abortion of the 7 judges as well, and still she conceded this truth. In fairness, it needs to be acknowledged that Bertha Wilson also opined that abortion should be permitted in the first trimester and restrictions should apply somewhere in the second. But technology has developed to the point where it is now settled science that a child becomes a human being at the moment of conception. Therefore, the arbitrary age line that Bertha drew is not morally supportable. Human rights begins when a human being begins, and that's at conception. Now here's from a 3rd judge in that majority ruling, Justice Jean Beats, quote, "I am of the view that the protection of the fetus is a valid objective in Canadian criminal law," end quote. Justice Beats went on to say, quote, "I think Section 1 of the Charter authorizes reasonable limits to be put on a woman's right having regard to the state interest in the protection of the fetus," end quote. Justice Willard Estee concurred. That is all 5 judges writing the majority opinion, agreeing unambiguously that the state has a legitimate interest in protecting preborn children. Amazing, isn't it? Why don't we hear this kind of talk from Prime Minister Trudeau, who points to the same Supreme Court ruling as his guiding light? Even Henry Morgentaler disagreed with Justin Trudeau's position of abortion on demand throughout all 9 months of pregnancy up to the moment of birth. Morgentaler once said that, quote, "Around 24 weeks, I have ethical problems doing that," end quote, meaning abortion, of course. And yet, Justin Trudeau made it clear to a reporter some years ago that he would not tolerate a restriction even so mild as banning sex-selective abortions. In conclusion, the Morgentaler ruling, which some legislators will soon celebrate, actually beckons them to restore legal protection to the unborn child. Thank you.